Part 48. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 471. Chapter 471. The world is big and the food is the biggest. On this day, Tao Hongying rushed to the restaurant to cook private dishes. Li Laosan brought a carriage and came back with 2 carts full of tableware. As soon as he jumped off the carriage, he shouted to his little niece, Fu Niuer, come and see, the dinner plate is ready. Jiyan is picking cabbage with grandma and plans to steam vegetable buns at noon. Hearing Sanbo's shout, she ran out quickly. Originally, the family wanted to order a batch of pots and bowls, but everyone calculated that a student would need 4 bowls and plates based on 1 bowl of rice, 2 dishes, and 1 bowl of soup. Suppose there are more than 300 people coming to eat, and more than 1,000 dishes must be washed for 1 meal. Everyone will be scared when they hear this number, and students cannot carry 4 bowls and plates at the same time. They also need to match a tray. In the end, Jiyan and Sanbo murmured for a while, and Li Laosan went to find the pottery kiln excitedly. The pottery kiln was also happy to take on such a big job and ship the finished product back today. Li Laosan carefully took out a dinner plate from the car. The plate was 1 foot too long, 1 foot wide, and had 4 depressions in the middle. The big one is for rice and steamed buns, the 2 smaller ones are for vegetables, and there is an original position for the soup bowl. The whole plate is not as heavy as Jiyan guessed. On the contrary, it is thin and strong. Although it is not as good as those shiny stainless steel plates in the previous life, it is surprisingly good. Sure enough, trusting the craftsman is never wrong. In addition to dinner plates, there are also many pottery basins, bowls, and other objects, each with a mark on the bottom. It was a round seal with the words "Food is the Sky" written in the small seal. Yes, Food is the Sky is the new name of the Li family canteen. This name was already too common in Jiyan's previous life, but she still wanted to decide on this name, because in the heart of a foodie, the world is not as big as eating. It is true that food is the most important thing for people. It really cannot be truer. The Li family also likes this name very much. When Li Laosan sent the menu to the dean yesterday, he had already asked the dean to make a suggestion. He was going to stay up late and carve out the plaque with his own hands. Everyone was busy helping, and the tableware was quickly carried in. Boil it in boiling water, let it dry naturally, and wait for it to be put into use when it opens. In the menu that the Li family sent to Deanzhou, they ordered 3 set meals, A, B, C, and 3. In fact, there is not much difference between each set meal. It is just 2 meat dishes for grade A, 1 meat dish and 1 vegetable for grade B, and 2 vegetarian dishes for grade C. Rice is white rice, rice, and sorghum rice. Steamed buns are white flour steamed buns, liangtu, and pancakes. The prices were set at 20 cents for Class A, 15 cents for Class B, and 10 cents for Class C. At this price, if it can ensure that the students have enough to eat, it is really cheap and affordable. Not to mention, there are free pickles and egg soup for every meal. Of course, this is just lunch. Breakfast consists of porridge, eggs, steamed buns and pancakes, as well as various mixed vegetables. The cost per person can definitely be controlled at about 10 yuan. Finally, it's dinner. The set meal will definitely be served, but on top of that, dumplings and stir-fry dishes will be added so that the students can also have a change of taste. Li Laosan originally had a good plan. He found a few colleagues who opened food shops on the shopping street and invited them to the canteen to do business together. As a result, although several people greeted him with smiles, they never mentioned entering the academy cafeteria. There are even discussions behind his back, saying that Li Laosan is too arrogant. How many years has the academy cafeteria been open? Don't the students still go out to eat? How could the students stop leaving school just because the Li family took over the cafeteria? After Li Laosan heard about it, he didn't care about them anymore. But there were also two families who just had to pay their rent for 1 month in the cafeteria, so they decided to give it a try. Of these two houses, one makes noodles and the other sells casseroles and bread. Li Lao-san tasted the taste and thought it was quite good, so he rented the 2 seats in the middle of the separated private room to them, leaving the 2 sides for the students to order banquets. At noon on the second day, as agreed, Dean Joe brought several gentlemen to the cafeteria to taste the food and taste it. It was also a sunny day with a warm breeze. Needless to say, as soon as Dean Joe saw the small garden, he decided to have his meal here. Daz's wife and son's second sister-in-law brought the dinner plates to them with their own hands, and they were a little excited. Originally, scholars were enough for them to respect, but those who came today are all gentlemen who teach scholars. Fortunately, Dean Joe and others looked gentle and nodded to them. The Lee family did not arrange first-class set meals for all the gentlemen. Instead, they had 3 types of meals, A, B, and C. Free soup and pickles were also served. Li Lao-san also ordered a first-class set meal to eat with him. He had been busy all morning and was tired and hungry. He didn't have much scruples about eating. He ate and drank soup in large gulps, which actually made Dean Joe and others at the same table also have appetites. It seemed that the food was even more delicious. When it became clear that these meals were all prepared by ordinary cooks, and that this would be what the students would eat in the future, the dean and the gentlemen left with peace of mind. In the afternoon, flyers announcing the opening of the canteen tomorrow were distributed to all school buildings. The list also has the daily tentative menu and the prices, which are very detailed and clear. Among the students, many of them solve their food problems at the Lee family's food shop on weekdays, and they like the Lee family's craftsmanship very much. Now you can eat without leaving the academy, and the canteen is more spacious and cleaner. Of course, everyone is happy. This afternoon, during the break in class, everyone was talking non-stop. The boys from the Lee family have been going to the cafeteria these days, and their classmates have noticed. At this time, I asked them a few more questions, so they told their classmates about the new dishes baked in the canteen and the small garden built in the canteen, which made the students even more curious. Of course, there are also people who can't stand the Lee brothers' coarseness and their sour and unpleasant speech. Especially those 2 underachievers in GRN's class. When they saw GRN being surrounded by his classmates and talking lively, one of them curled his lips and shouted, "Oh, our academy is really getting more and more careless. Can anyone be admitted to study? It's already shameful for my family to open a shop and sell food, but now I open a cafeteria in the academy. I'm so shameless." Another student also laughed and said, "That's right. The academy is a place where sages and sages are read. Why did such a copper-smelling guy sneak in?" These words were obviously aimed at GRN. Several classmates who were close friends with GRN were so angry that they started to scold them, but GRN stopped them. He did not shy away from it and directly faced 2 classmates and said, "Our Logoan Academy has always been famous for its broad mind, and we believe in educating everyone without distinction. As long as you like reading and are willing to work hard for it, you can become a Logoan's disciple. But in your words, why does Logoan discriminate against merchants? Are all my classmates who come from merchant families and come to Logoan to study, so they are thick-skinned?" The 2 students were gagged. Looking at the dark faces of several classmates with business backgrounds in the class, they knew they had said the wrong thing. The 4th update is here. Little cuties, please give Wawa a 5-star review or a little bit of good reading. The more must-read votes, the better. Wawa is working hard and coding hard. Tuck ball, roll, and sell cute balls. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 472. Chapter 472. Difficulty is not difficult for those who don't know how to do it, but it is not difficult for those who know how to do it. but before they could change their words, Grn added, also, in life, one has no choice in one's origin. Some people are born into wealthy families, some are born into small households in the market, and some are even born as slaves. What we can do is study hard and change our background, but this does not mean that we should forget our origins, look down on our origins, and look down on our relatives. The lamb kneels down to breastfeed, and the crow feeds it back. Do we know how to read, but we are not even as good as animals? What's the point of reading? He raised his hand and nodded at two classmates, with a cold look in his eyes, and solemnly warned, "Today I want to thank you for your friendship with my classmates, so I will tolerate you for now. Next time I hear you criticizing and humiliating my family, you will not be spared." The school was quiet for a while. The next moment, all the students were applauding as hard as they could. Someone said, "Well said, these two idiots should wake up." The companion next to him also sneered, "That is, if our academy did not adhere to the principle of teaching without distinction, these two white-eyed wolves who have forgotten their roots would not be able to enter." Some people also ridiculed, "Humph, you see they seem to dislike everything. How can they really be hungry at noon every day and not go to the cafeteria to eat? The gate of the academy is not open at noon. Do they really know how to drink the Northwest wine to satisfy themselves?" At this moment, the lecturer came. After coughing twice, everyone hurriedly returned to their seats. The gentleman didn't say anything, so everyone thought he didn't hear what he said. At the end of get out of class, the teacher called the names of the two underachievers and said, "Go back and copy the college rules 10 times and hand them over to me tomorrow." After saying that, the gentleman left. There was silence in the school building for a moment, and then a burst of cheers erupted. Grn also likes his husband to be sensible, but he doesn't bother to do things that add insult to injury. So, he called his classmates, "Let's go to the cafeteria to eat. Today there is braised pork. My fourth aunt is a descendant of the royal chef, and this braised pork is a recipe given by her. It is very delicious when paired with white rice. Get up, I haven't had it for a long time. If you don't go, I'm afraid you won't be able to grab it. Let's go, hurry up and eat meat. I'm starving to death, I've been looking forward to it for most of the day. Together, wait for me." After hearing this, the students, of course, did not dare to delay. They crowded out of the school building like a swarm of swarms and went straight to the cafeteria. In the cafeteria, when everyone heard the bell ringing for the end of school, they were ready. Regardless of what errands they were doing, everyone from the chef to the dishwashers wore sky blue sleeved aprons, hats, headscarves, etc. They were wrapped tightly to avoid hair falling into the food, or people coughing or sneezing. Annoying. And sky blue looks the cleanest and freshest, and even a little bit of dirt can be seen. This is to use this uniform to convey a message to the students in the cafeteria. They ensure that the cafeteria is hygienic and clean. The two large windows between the dining room and the kitchen have been opened. One is filled with plates filled with food, and the other is filled with several empty basins. On the top of the window where the dinner plates are placed, 3 large characters are posted, "Serving slot." Where the empty basin is placed, it says "Recycle." The students poured into the cafeteria courtyard and fell in love with the small garden at first sight. Especially the big parasol, it's really interesting. After entering the house, I queued up at the window to buy a set meal, and I was even more attracted by the novel dinner plates. A small number of students bought Class A and Class C, while the majority chose the meat and vegetables of Class B. Some people asked for free egg soup and pickles, and then ran to the small garden, where a few close friends gathered to eat, drink and talk. Tao Hongying stayed in Luoan these days, not only to help with cleaning, but also to provide special training to Aunt Wu San and the others. For example, the third aunt is responsible for the staple food, which is steaming steamed buns, pancakes, and steamed rice. Sun's second sister-in-law is responsible for stews, Dazhuang's daughter-in-law is responsible for vegetarian dishes and cold dishes, and Zhao Yuru is learning to prepare stuffing. The four of them are all housewives. They have been working around the cooking pot for many years and have no shortage of basic skills. Besides, Zhao Yuru and third Aunt Wu have been running a restaurant for so long, and Dezhuang's daughter-in-law and second sister-in-law Sun are working in the kitchen of Hot Spring Valley. This kind of special training is purely to improve their skills. A few people studied it seriously, and the results were remarkable. Today's meat dishes, braised pork and twice-cooked pork, were almost unanimously praised by the students. When returning the dinner plates, many people asked if these two dishes were available in the evening. Everyone was happy and funny when they heard this, and quickly told the students that they might have to wait until next week, because the menu for the week has been decided and cannot be changed easily. Of course, the food for dinner is not bad, there are even freshly cooked dumplings, and there are noodles and pancakes on the small stove opposite for a change. Not to mention that the students were joking and talking and went back to class. It was just that everyone in the Li family was busy washing the dishes, tidying them up, and then sat down to summarize their experiences. Having just received a lunch, a lot of problems were exposed. Students' appetites vary, and some eat more. The dishes in the set meal are enough, but not the rice and steamed buns. Some people with small appetites ate all the vegetables but left the staple food. For example, there are a few bites of rice left, and a third of the steamed buns are left. It would be a pity to throw it away like this, but if you don't throw it away, you can't keep it and eat it. There is also the issue of collecting money. When students take copper coins to buy food, they have to count them in cash. Some even took silver dimes and needed to weigh them and make change, which was even more time-consuming. Of course, there are still some minor problems, but they are innocuous. Only these two are urgent to solve. Mrs. Li and Jiyan, who were afraid of delaying everyone's work here, went back to the small courtyard to have lunch with Wenjuan, and now they just came holding hands. Hearing these two questions, Jiyan had no solution to the first one, but found the second one very easy. It was also her negligence. She didn't think of it before and didn't remind her family. Actually, the solution to the difficulty of collecting money is very simple, which is to exchange meal tickets. Design a set of receipts. It doesn't need to be complicated, just stamp it with the canteen's seal. It's best to use some anti-counterfeiting measures. Then let the students take the money and exchange it for meal tickets in advance. When eating, it is much more convenient to use the notes instead of money. For example, the denominations are mainly set to 20 cents, 15 cents, and 10 cents. You can also add some small denominations such as 5 cents to prepare students to buy more steamed buns. In short, bills are easier to carry than money, and they directly correspond to the three packages, saving you money on change. But the good news cannot be said carelessly, because there are not only family members here, but also Aunt Wu and 6 or 7 outsiders. So, she made an excuse and asked Sanbo to carry him out of the cafeteria. Then she quietly whispered in Sanbo's ear. Li Lao-san did not expect that such a big problem could be solved so easily by his niece. He happily carried his niece around the cafeteria several times, making people passing by think he was going crazy. When the uncle and nephew returned to the house, everyone had solved the first problem. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 473. Chapter 473, One milk is the barrier, and no one can open it. That means reducing the amount of rice in the set meal, and shrinking the size of the steamed buns. When students order food, ask them if they can add another spoonful of rice or a small steamed bun if necessary. If it is not needed, it will not be given. In this way, I dare not say that waste will be completely avoided, but it will alleviate the waste problem to a certain extent. Everyone was even more happy when they heard Li Lao-san talk about the meal tickets. Today Zhao Yuru is in charge of collecting the money. She was so happy that she could not wait to clap her hands and praised, "This is a good method, but it saves me from counting copper coins. Even now, I am still counting 1, 2, 3 in my head." Everyone felt relieved after solving the two big problems and went about their business one after another. Noon has passed, but the ingredients for dinner still need to be prepared, especially some dumplings need to be made for the students to have a change of taste. But there is no need to prepare too much, because school ends in the middle of the afternoon. In the 2 hours of free time, the students will definitely have to go out to play. I am afraid that not many people are willing to come back for dinner. It's a pity that everyone still underestimated the charm of the new canteen. After school, the students actually brought books and gathered together in the small garden, chatting and joking while talking about their studies. It was very lively. Since there was no room outside, some people entered the dining hall and found a quiet corner to study and wait for their meal. Maybe they wanted to finish eating early and then go back to school. Li Lao-san saw him and quickly boiled tea, but there were only 2 tea sets in the canteen. If you have fewer teapots, you can make more trips and fill them more often, but you cannot share teacups. Helping, he could only take a clean porcelain bowl to recharge. The students were very polite and thanked them one after another. First of all, tea is free, and secondly, drinking tea, admiring flowers, and blowing in the spring breeze make you feel more comfortable. Ji-Yan felt sleepy in the afternoon and took a nap in Sun's second sister-in-law's room. She was woken up by the sound of voices outside, so she lay down at the window to watch the excitement. As she looked at it, a new idea came to her mind. In the past, the best sellers in and around the university included food and drinks. We sell fruit drinks with ice in summer, hot milk tea in winter, and ordinary tea on weekdays. With so many students in the academy, just 1 cup per person per day would make a profit of 2 cents, which is more than a dozen taels a month. These dozen taels may not be too much, but they are definitely a lot. You should know that for a strong laborer, if he works hard for a month, his wages will only be about 1 tael of silver. What's more, this is a small business backed by a big tree in the cafeteria. The cost is low. Even if the business stops at any time, there will be no big loss. Furthermore, students are used to gathering here, sitting and having a drink, which can also help the cafeteria to stabilize its popularity. Thinking like this, she hugged her grandma and shouted to go back to the small courtyard. Ms. Lee originally stayed aside when her granddaughter woke up and made no noise. Now she saw that the kitchen was getting busy and she couldn't help, so she straightened her granddaughter's clothes and called Shui Ling and he left. Wenjuan was cooking dinner with her maid Xiao Yu. When she saw her grandma and sister-in-law coming back, she asked about the business in the canteen. She was also very happy when she heard that business was booming. Xiao Yu was lively and even jumped and clapped her hands, shouting, "Let those people on the street take a good look." Earlier, they said that our family was not afraid of flashing their tongues when they told lies. How could it be possible that as soon as the canteen opened, it took away their business? Now, they were afraid that their intestines would be destroyed. It's time to have dinner soon, and the gate of the academy is also open, but not many students are coming out. They are crying. Children, there are behind you. Ms. Lee frowned when she heard this, glanced at her grandson's daughter-in-law, and said, "We can just talk about this at home. Don't say it when we go out. It will easily attract people's hatred." Wenjuan also scolded Xiao Yu, "You talk nonsense, you don't know what to say, and you don't even cook." Xiao Yu stuck out her tongue and ran away quickly. Jian still liked Wenjuan's sister-in-law very much. He didn't want her to be embarrassed, so he stepped forward and grabbed her hand, and said with a smile, "Sister-in-law, I have come up with a good business, can I give it to you to make a fortune?" Wenjuan smiled and bent down to hug her sister-in-law. She didn't take it too seriously and said, "Okay, my sister-in-law will buy you a solid gold bracelet when she gets rich." Jian covered her face, everyone knew that she liked solid gold bracelets. "Then my sister-in-law will come up with me at night to think about delicious food when I speak, my sister-in-law will do it." Jian hugged her sister-in-law's neck, causing Wenjuan to giggle. Soon, Shui Ling was sent out to buy things. Actually, what good news needs is either something new or novel, or something complicated and numerous. Mammy he was afraid that Shui Ling wouldn't be able to buy it alone, so she followed her. As soon as the two of them went out, Tao Hongying and Jia Huan rushed back from the city. The business of the restaurant is getting better and better, and Jia Huan is cautious, fearing that someone will do something secretly. So, when the uncle is not in the restaurant on weekdays, he will stay overnight. Even though Luoan is so close to the new capital, he only comes back once every 3 to 5 days. Tao Hongying was thinking about her mother-in-law and daughter. After cooking the private dishes, she helped a little and came back with Jiawen. Jian first kissed my mother, and then ran over, calling her second brother happily. Jia Huan hugged her sister and walked around the yard a few times. After playing for a while, Jian jumped off the ground, then took her brother's hand and walked towards Wenjuan. "Sister-in-law, I will return my second brother to you." Wenjuan blushed deeply and turned around to get into the stove. Jian kept giggling and was tickled by her brother who was also blushing. Soon, dinner was served and the family of 5 finished eating. Tao Hongying and Jia Huan were thinking about the canteen and rushed to help. At this time, Grandma He and Shui Ling also bought things. Saltpeter, brown sugar, medium quality black tea, honey, 2 pounds of red beans, a small basket of wild strawberries, and a small bucket of milk. The previous ones are not difficult to buy. Only this milk was bought by Grandma He and Shui Ling when they went to a small village outside the town. This Zhuangzi's milk was sent to the city for the nobles to wash their faces and bathe. When they heard that Grandma He and Shui Ling wanted to buy it, they squeezed out a bucket of it. They wanted to give money, but they didn't ask for it yet. They just thought they had children at home and no milk to drink. Jian hugged Grandma's neck and gave Grandma a difficult task. "Grandma, guard the door for me and my sister-in-law. We are going to study the recipe in secret and give you something good to drink later." "Okay, let's go." Grandma is sitting at the door. Mrs. Li patted her granddaughter, her eyes full of doting. As the saying goes, one milk can shut the door, and no one can open it. Ha ha ha, Jian was so amused that she burst into laughter. She hugged her grandma and kissed her for a long time before dragging her sister-in-law into the kitchen. Summer is about to enter. In fact, Jian is more optimistic about fruit drinks with ice than milk tea. If other people are still worried, after all, there are ice sellers in the city, but the ice sold is too expensive. But the Li family is not afraid. You must know that the cyclamen have a whole boat of seafood brought back from the south, and almost half of the boat is filled with ice. The level of luxury will never make their peers jealous. It's because the Li family can make their own ice. Previously, only Li Zhensheng and a young steward who had signed a death contract knew the recipe. Later, Ji Yi and Lu Yang helped the young steward when he was too busy and learned the recipe. Now if I tell my sister-in-law Wenjuan, the good news is not a big deal. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 474. Chapter 474. Although milk tea is good, don't be greedy for it. Wenjuan, on the other hand, squatted on the ground and watched with her own eyes as saltpeter was added to the big basin in front of her, and the water in the small basin in the middle turned into ice. Her eyes widened in shock, she covered her mouth tightly, and looked at her sister-in-law with eyes full of surprise. She has only been married a few months. Can her grandson know the secret recipe for making ice? Funiur, just pretend you haven't seen my sister-in-law today. Don't worry, my sister-in-law won't say a word. I'll call grandma in. Wenjuan was frightened and stood up to go out, but was pulled back by Jian. Sister-in-law, don't worry, grandma knows about it, and uncle and the others have been making ice like this for a long time when transporting seafood. Besides, you are my second brother's daughter-in-law and a member of my own family. Just don't let others know about it. We are still going to make a fortune this way. Wenjuan's fear was easily shattered by the words family. She took a deep breath and nodded heavily. Sister, don't worry, I won't tell anyone. Jian smiled and pointed outside and said, second brother, you can still tell me. If second sister-in-law is pregnant with a baby, ask second brother to make ice for you. Grandma and the others said that you can't get cold when you are pregnant with a baby. Wenjuan's face turned red. She didn't dare to continue this topic, so she quickly urged her sister-in-law to arrange work for her. Jian gave her the red beans and boiled them in a pot of water. They were quickly cooked and became soft and glutinous. She took them out and put them aside. Then, boil brown sugar and black tea, add milk, cook and simmer for half a quarter of an hour. Finally, filter out the tea stems, pour into a cup, add a spoonful of red bean puree, and stir evenly. Jian tried to take a sip. The sweetness is just right, the tea taste is fragrant, the milk taste is mellow, and the red bean paste has a dense texture. Although there are no pearl balls, I always feel that something is missing. But I can't find tapioca flour at the moment, so I can't make dumplings, so I have to use red bean paste instead. Fortunately, it tastes good too. If you have a cup when you are hungry or sleepy, it will definitely relieve hunger and refresh you. Wenjuan was a little hesitant at first. After all, it would look awkward to boil good tea leaves with brown sugar and milk. But the sister-in-law's expression was so much enjoyment that she couldn't help but bravely took a bite. After finishing the drink, Wenjuan's eyes lit up. She wanted to say something but couldn't. She was anxious and could only take another sip, savor it carefully, and then said, "This is too delicious. It is mellower than tea and has no milky smell. I thought it would taste weird, I didn't expect it to be completely different." Jian took her and started making fruit drinks again. In fact, fruit drinks are simpler, just mix half-mashed wild strawberries with honey, add cold boiled water and a little ice cubes. Jian wanted to make something decent, but there wasn't even a passion fruit here, so she had to use local materials. These wild strawberries grow on the nearby hills. I saw someone selling them during the day. They were very red and beautiful, and a basket of them only cost 10 cents, which was very cheap. But this thing is just a generic product, it looks good and cheap, but it is so sour that even children won't eat it easily. However, she specially added honey to neutralize it, and with the coolness of ice cubes, the finished product turned out to be surprisingly delicious. Li Laosan and Jie Huan were in front, and Zhao Yuru was holding Tao Hongying behind. The four of them walked back from the cafeteria, chatting and laughing. As soon as they entered the door, they saw old Mrs. Li guarding the kitchen door. The four of them were puzzled. Zhao Yuru hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Mom, why aren't you asleep yet? What are you doing sitting here?" Mrs. Li smiled and replied, "What good things are Jian and Wenjuan poking at? I will help guard the door and earn money by then, so that they can share my share." Of course Mrs. Li was joking, but everyone laughed. Just at this moment, the door to the kitchen opened. Wenjuan's face turned red with excitement, and she held a tray in her hand, with several small porcelain bowls placed on the tray. Jian followed with a smile, coughed twice and said seriously, "The store is opening today. Please try milk tea and iced fruit drinks for free." Don't miss it if you pass by. Everyone laughed even harder. Such a young boss is probably the only one in Tianwu. Zhao Yura bent down and picked up her little niece, and said with a smile, "Oh, our little boss Fu Niuer is very fast. It has only been half a day, and he has already opened a new store." Li Lao-san also rubbed his niece's head, while Jia Huan took the tray from his wife's hand and led the whole family into the house. Like good news and treasures, grandma, mother and third uncle were served milk tea, while third uncle and elder brother were given iced fruit drinks. The remaining few glasses were left to Grandma He, Shui Ling and Xiao Yu to pick at will. Sure enough, milk tea was loved by young and old girls, and the iced fruit drink was also drank up by Li Lao-san and Jia Huan in one go. "Is this thing going to be sold in the canteen?" Li Lao-san was the first to ask, his eyes shining with joy. "Originally I wanted to buy a few more tea sets, but now it seems I don't need them." Ji Yin hurried over and hugged third uncle's thigh. "Third uncle, I must buy a cup, a beautiful one and a big one." Li Lao-san obeyed his niece's advice and immediately nodded in agreement. "Okay, my third uncle will take you to draw a picture in a moment. Whatever you want, my third uncle will bake it." Zhao Yuru was in charge of the money box and more concerned about the cost. She held her daughter-in-law and talked for a long time. In the end, everyone felt that this small business could be done, the cost was low, and the profit was high enough. The main reason is that it tastes good when drunk. If you put it in the cafeteria, students can drink it if they want. If they don't drink it, they won't lose anything. Jiyan and Uncle San went to draw some drawings of mugs and milk teapots. When they came back, they found that their mother and uncle drank 2 more bowls of milk tea. Fortunately, Grandma was afraid of getting up at night, so she didn't refill the glass. Jiyan's big eyes were bent in laughter, she covered her small mouth, and didn't say a word. Early on the second day, before dawn, Li Lao-san went to the canteen to work, and Jia Huan also hurried back to the city. Wen Juan took He and others to make breakfast. Mrs. Li and Jiyan washed themselves up and just sat down at the dining table when they saw Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru yawning and walking out of the room. Mrs. Li was so surprised that she thought her daughters-in-law had all gone to the canteen. Only Jiyan laughed mischievously, and was caught by Tao Hongying, who asked forcefully, "Bad girl, tell me, was the milk tea last night too strong, with too many tea leaves?" "I was energetic last night, at least. I slept half an hour later than usual." Zhao Yuru also said, "Yes, I was doing needlework in front of the oil lamp, and I felt sleepy after holding onto an extra shoe sole." Jiyan was lightly patted twice on the buttocks by her mother. The distressed Mrs. Li quickly took her granddaughter over and said, "You guys drank too much. I don't drink tea very much at ordinary times. I drank so much all of a sudden. It must be delayed go to sleep. Besides, my granddaughter is thinking that this milk tea is not for you to drink. It has great uses. Jiaran came back for dinner a few days ago, and he said that he fell asleep during evening classes and almost knocked over the inkstone, so he was scolded by his teacher. Also, Jiawan and Jiaxi always said that they tend to get hungry during evening classes, and the teacher only allowed him to drink water. Not allowed to eat? Think about it, if they could drink a cup of this milk tea, wouldn't they be very hungry and refreshed? Jiyan was pleasantly surprised. He turned around and gave Grandma a big kiss. He was extremely excited and said, "Grandma, you understand me best. That's why." Mrs. Li smiled proudly and said, "Of course, my granddaughter is the most attentive. Others only see that the boys in our family take care of and love their sister, but no one knows that my granddaughter is also kind to her brothers." End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 475. Chapter 475, Master leads us in, cultivation depends on the individual. Tao Hongying and Zhao Yuru saw this. What dare they say? Last night, they were indeed greedy for drinks. Soon, after breakfast, Zhao Yuru and Tao Hongying rushed to the cafeteria. Wen Juan brought Xiao Yu, Nanny He and Shui Ling with her. They wanted to prepare some more things and send them to the cafeteria before school ended. At that time, we will be able to see the students' reactions and find out whether the new product suits their tastes. As the saying goes, the master leads the door, and the practice is personal. After Ji Yin slept for a night, the novelty of milk tea disappeared, and she simply became the shopkeeper. This small business is also left to my sister-in-law Wenjuan, so let her do whatever she wants. Ji Yin was about to take grandma to go shopping on the street, but unexpectedly Mr. Wen and Li Lauer came over. Old Mrs. Li was also startled, fearing that something would happen at home. As a result, Li Lauer said, "There is nothing going on at home. Brother Jiren and Brother Li are going to take the children's examination tomorrow. Mr. Wen and I are here to take a look, and we will go back to the city together tomorrow." "Is it so fast? There are still a few days before the exam." Mrs. Li couldn't believe it. She counted her fingers and sighed. In the past few days, the whole family has been running around for the canteen, and the two children have really been neglected. The exam day is indeed tomorrow. Jiren is a sensible kid and didn't even take the initiative to say a word. This is because his family is busy and he doesn't want his family to bother with him. But why don't the children think about what else is more important at home than their exams? Ji Yin was also thinking about it and hurriedly ran to tell Xiao Yu and Nanny He to deliver milk tea to the academy in the afternoon. "Be sure to say a few more words, try new drinks carefully and don't overdose. Especially for students who have exams tomorrow, just to be on the safe side, don't drink. If you feel uncomfortable and delay tomorrow's exam, something big will happen." Mr. Wen and Li Lauer were very curious when they heard about it, so they also tried milk tea and fruit drinks. They hadn't eaten in the morning, but after drinking the hot milk tea, their stomachs felt much better, so the two of them praised the milk tea again and again. Similarly, after school in the afternoon, the students were a little hungry and sat in the small garden of the cafeteria. While waiting for the meal to be served and laughing, they suddenly got a pot of milk tea. Everyone was immediately attracted by this fragrant and refreshing drink. Captured. So, to the surprise of Li Lao-san and others, milk tea was actually more popular than iced fruit drinks. But don't worry, the weather is getting hotter and hotter, and maybe the iced fruit drink will become a big seller. Wenjuan was restless all afternoon, for fear of ruining the business and wasting her sister-in-law's efforts. Finally, at dusk, Xiao Yu ran back from the cafeteria panting, shouting happily, Miss, I've finished all the milk tea. It's more popular than fruit drinks." Wenjuan immediately burst into joy, holding the good news in her arms and running around in circles with joy. In the room, Jiren and Brother Li were talking to Mr. Wen. Mr. Wen gave them some instructions on the exam details and gave them reassurance. "This exam tests all the basics. As long as you study hard for 3 years, you will definitely pass. You all have a very good basics. Don't be nervous, you will definitely make a mistake." Jiren and Brother Li both stood up and saluted to express their thanks. They felt more at ease when they heard that Mr. Wen would be accompanying him for the exam tomorrow. Jiaxi, Jian, and Mao Gear are 3 people who don't have to take the exam. They just drank the fruit drink and liked it very much. Now they are thinking about trying the milk tea. Unfortunately, the family was afraid that they would sleep late if they drank too much, and Jiren and Brother Li would not be able to sleep well if they were delayed any longer. Therefore, Mrs. Li kept a tight watch on the 3 of them, giving them warning glances from time to time. The 3 boys shrank their necks, looked haggard, and hurried back to the academy after eating. There are still friends in the academy who can play football together. It is really scary to stay at home and be guarded by grandma. So the fragrance is far away and the smell is close. The grandma they missed so much before has now lived with them for less than half a month, and she is no longer so familiar. Early on the next morning, the academy sent 2 gentlemen to bring more than 20 students who were going to take the boy examination into the city. The college has already sent the students' academic status and household registration in advance. Today is just an exam. The young and old of the Lee family have been thinking about it all day long, and they are distracted from anything they do. Mrs. Lee even took her granddaughter to visit the town entrance several times, which stretched her neck. At dusk, finally, the college's carriage came back. Mr. and the students all had smiles on their faces, which showed that they did well in the exam. Grn and brother Lee jumped out of the car in advance and walked home with their grandma and sister. Mrs. Lee was so happy that she wanted to thank God when she heard that both of her grandsons were admitted on the spot, and that the eldest grandson's left-hand writing was praised by the examiner. That night, while waiting for Li Lao-san, Zhao Yuru and Tao Hongying to come back from the canteen, a banquet was held in the small courtyard. 7 or 8 members of my family sat around and celebrated a little. Grn and brother Lee also took leave and can stay at home tonight, so they are also here now. Old Mrs. Lee was half drunk, holding their hands and secretly wiping her tears. I finally have the nerve to meet your grandfather. Previously, the boss was admitted as a scholar, and the family was happy, but I have been crying for more than 10 years. Now that the family is better off, and you are successful, even if I die immediately, I'm satisfied. Everyone understood the old woman's mood, but they did not dare to persuade her, for fear of making her cry even more. So they quickly changed the subject and started talking about the small business of selling milk tea. Wenjuan is usually a good housekeeper, so she definitely can't sell milk tea in the cafeteria. Fortunately, red bean paste must be cooked at home, ice cubes must be prepared at home, and brown sugar and tea leaves must be cooked at home. Xiaoyu will help transport it back and forth. The academy only needs people to mix and heat it temporarily before selling it. For the time being, Zhao Yuru and others will help and try to sell a section before and after dinner. If the business is still good, they will slowly find a suitable person to take over. Even if this matter is settled, as for the canteen, tomorrow we will build a small thatched shed in the corner of the garden and decorate it with some flowers and plants, which will be enough to serve as a small sales point. Wenjuan was excited and happy after hearing this. She finally had an errand to do. But when it came to the money she earned, she insisted on giving more than half of it to her sister-in-law, even if she only got a salary. But Jiyan, a little money lover, has created too many ways to make money for himself in the past few years, so he is really not short of this. Besides, she originally wanted to add color to the cafeteria and create a small business for her second sister-in-law, and she didn't even think about getting involved. Therefore, she was determined not to want it, and said, I don't want it. Second sister-in-law makes money to buy delicious food, keep fat, and give me a little nephew to play with. Wenjuan and Jiawen both blushed, but everyone laughed. In the end, it was Mrs. Lee who made the decision, just listen to Fu Niuer. If Wenjuan is grateful, she can make some money and sew some dresses for your sister. Wenjuan couldn't put it off any longer and made up her mind to work hard and repay her family for the care and love they gave her. Getting up on the second day, Mrs. Lee went back to Sujintan. Even though it had been a long time since she came out, she was eager to announce the good news to everyone. After all, her 2 grandsons had become successful. Jiyan also missed home, so Mrs. Lee called Tao Hongying, packed her luggage, took Grandma He and Shuiling, and they set off. There had been 2 light rains before, so there was no shortage of water in the fields and the crops were growing like crazy. It has only been a few days. Looking from a distance, the fields have changed from light new green to green, as if the spring breeze is blowing, full of vitality. As soon as the Lee family's carriage stopped at the gate of the courtyard door of the Kui family next door opened. Mrs. Kui actually walked out of it. I don't know whether she didn't sleep well or was sick. She looked a little haggard. Continuing with the fourth update, today's update is a little late, everyone, please forgive me. Huawei has been updating for 3 days. It would be better if you give encouragement to the leg-hugging ball. If the ball is given a 5-star rating or a good review, it would be better if you have votes, okay. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 476. Chapter 476, Holding Your Breath and Feeling Angry. Jian jumped down from the carriage and hugged Mrs. Kui's thigh directly. Sister Aunt, Senior Aunt, I miss you. Does Senior Aunt not want Funiur? Wow, Funiur is so pitiful. Mrs. Kui couldn't help laughing when she saw the fat girl pretending to cover her eyes and not squeeze out tears for a long time. She quickly bent down and picked her up for a good kiss. How could it be? Senior Aunt loves Funiur the most. If Funiur doesn't come back, Senior Aunt will chase you to Luoan. Senior Aunt brought your favorite snacks, sewed a beautiful skirt, and another good thing. Let's hide it under the quilt at night and look at it. Jian's eyes were bright, and she immediately became happier. She hugged Mrs. Kui's face, turned into a fat ball and made a wooden bird, made Mrs. Kui's face a big tree, and kissed her hard several times. Mrs. Kui's smile looked more like flowers blooming on her face. She couldn't help teasing the fat girl. Did Funiur eat a lot of good food when she went to Luoan? She seems to be heavier than last time when she held her. If she keeps doing this, you're going to change your name to Fat Girl. Jian hid her little face in Mrs. Kui's bun, like a quail with a shrinking neck. Didn't hear, she didn't hear, she didn't hear anything. She is not fat, she is not fat at all. Orange Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying watched the big and small laughing at the same time. Tao Hongying said, this girl only eats and sleeps all day long. She is more blessed than a pig. If she doesn't gain meat, who will? Mrs. Li immediately corrected her granddaughter's name. Nonsense. Our Funiur is a good child, and she helped us a lot when we went to Luoan this time. Although our Funiur has short arms and legs, we have smart minds. He gave her third uncle a lot of good ideas. Okay, mother is right, Funiur is good at everything. Tao Hongying couldn't laugh or cry when she heard this, and hurriedly called everyone into the house. Otherwise, the mother-in-law can really stand at the door and praise her granddaughter from head to toe. Shui Yun was left at home for so many days, and she was still looking forward to the return of her masters. At this moment, she was flying around happily like a little bee, sometimes serving tea and sometimes helping to carry luggage. Old Mrs. Li asked a few questions about her family and heard that everything was fine, so she sent Grandma He, Shui Ling and Shui Yun to pack their luggage. In this way, the two little sisters can have a quiet chat, and Aunt He can also take a rest. Dong Mei heard the commotion and came over from next door to talk to Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying. After saying a few words, the village chief, Uncle Zhao, Lu Baiatu, Liu's sister-in-law, Huaniyang and others all gathered over. As soon as the village chief uncle entered the door, he shouted, "You are back. I don't feel like it on weekdays, but after suddenly walking for a while, the village seems to be a lot deserted. Except for the valley, there is no excitement anywhere." Uncle Zhao also followed suit and said, "Yeah, forget it at night, it's quiet during the day, and we all start to hope that the naughty boys will cause some trouble." Everyone laughed and quickly gave up their seats to the old men, offering them tea and snacks. Jian took out her favorite sticky cake and gave the old men a piece each. The old men were also very considerate, stroking Jian's hair, picking it up and eating it. As a result, they never had a chance to speak again. Your teeth are sticky. In order to save the few old teeth they have left, they can only concentrate on fighting sticky cakes. After asking about the twins in Huanayang's family, Mrs. Lee asked the fat boy from the Lu family about the business in the valley, the fruit trees on the mountain, the melon fields on the riverbank. In short, there was nothing she didn't care about. After finding out everything, she reluctantly felt relieved. Mrs. Kui held the good news in her arms, took off the silver comb from her head, combed her fluffy braids again, and said with a smile, "Aunt, senior brother sent Wen Hai to deliver a letter last night, saying that both Jiren and brother Li passed the childbirth examination. The two children are so amazing. Although the childbirth examination is not difficult, it is rare for them to be admitted on the spot." Everyone was happy to hear this, and the village chief was even more anxious to swallow the sticky cake. He stretched his neck while choking, and asked in a hoarse voice, "Jiren, ahem, brother Li has already achieved fame." "That's great, the two boys are so good." Uncle Zhao also clapped and applauded, extremely excited. The two old brothers sitting next to him, both with legs and no hands, didn't know how to be happy at this moment. They actually clapped together with one hand each, and they made a squeaking sound. Everyone couldn't help but laugh and felt a little sad. Tao Hongying quickly changed her words and said, "Everyone has worked hard to guard the new village these days. My mother was still talking about it on the road. When I cook some good dishes in the evening, everyone will come to the house to eat. It will be lively. Okay, if not for anything else, just for Jiren and brother Li, we have to have a good wedding wine." The village chief uncle agreed immediately. Huanayang and sister-in-law Lu also nodded. Huanayang said, "Let's go home and make arrangements, and we'll come to help later." As he spoke, everyone dispersed, and the old men hurriedly went to announce the good news to the whole village. Jiyan put away the sticky cakes and regretted that the old men who had almost harmed him had become toothless people. She jumped off the ground, took Dongmei's hand, and went to walk around Yes yard. Tao Hongying thought that her daughter was going to take a look at the small treasury she had secretly hidden in Yes house, so she didn't stop her and let her go after telling her to come back early. Seeing that no one was in the room, Mrs. Li pulled Mrs. Kui and asked, "Jinro, you don't look good. Tell your aunt, is there something on your mind?" Mrs. Kui's eyes were red at that time. "Auntie, nothing happened, I just missed you, so I came back to stay for 2 days to see you." How could Mrs. Li believe it? She slapped her angrily and urged, "Why are you still having an affair with your aunt? My aunt has told you so many times that your surname is not Li, but you are our Li family. We came out of the mountains together struggling to survive. In my aunt's heart, you, Hongying and Yuru are the same. If you have a grievance, you should tell it to your aunt instead of telling others." Mrs. Kui couldn't hold it any longer, hugged the old lady and shed tears. "Auntie, they are bullying me. Wow, I can't curse, I can't hold my breath, I really have no place to go, so I have to hide in our house." Orange Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying looked at each other in surprise. They originally thought that Mrs. Kui was having trouble with Mr. Wen, but from what she meant, it seemed like she was being bullied by an outsider. Tao Hongying persuaded, "Sister Jinro, please tell me carefully what's going on. My mother and I are confused. You stay in the village all day, so logically you can't offend anyone. This person has a very high status. Is that noble? Why can't you scold me back? You're too embarrassed to speak, and here's me, I'll scold you back." Mrs. Kui is older than Tao Hongying. Tao Hongying calls her sister on weekdays and is very close to her. At this moment, Mrs. Kui felt a little embarrassed. How can a sister be bullied and ask her to help out? She was used to being strong-tempered, but when she arrived at Li's house, she couldn't stand it anymore when she saw old Mrs. Li, who was like a mother. She raised her hand to wipe her tears and explained, it's senior brother Wen's mother and sister-in-law. They have been coming to my village every day for the past few days and sitting there all day long, forcing me. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 477. Chapter 477, Being Bullied to the Doorstep. She was only halfway through speaking when Aunt Wu, Huanayang and sister-in-law Lu hugged the child and returned with some food. She stopped talking and said, "When it gets quiet tomorrow, I'll talk to my aunt in detail." Mrs. Li nodded and said, "Okay, let's talk tomorrow. In short, since we are all back, you can eat, sleep, and take care of yourself. Everything else is a trivial matter. They just came back today and there are people coming and going at home, so it is not a good time to talk about this matter." Aunt Wu, Huanayang and sister-in-law Lu entered the house and saw Mrs. Kui's eyes were a little red. They guessed that something was wrong, but they were smart enough not to ask. Huanayang and sister-in-law Lu took out the needles and threads they had made before and handed them to Mrs. Kui one after another. They are both good at needlework, especially Huanayang. If she can be Jiyan's master, her craftsmanship is definitely first class. Mrs. Kui touched her embroidered shoes, looked at her soft middle coat, and smiled. It feels good to be rewarded for your efforts and to have someone care about everything. At this time, Dong Mei also walked in from the outside holding Jiyan's hand and said, "Old lady, Zhuangzi sent some food last night. I originally wanted to send it to Luowan. Now that you are back, there's no need to bother." Mrs. Li glanced at her smiling granddaughter, wondering if there was anything else she didn't understand. It must be this little girl who used Zhuangzi's name to add something to the banquet in the evening. Mrs. Li hugged her granddaughter, kissed her, and told Tao Hongying, "We have everything. The rest depends on your craftsmanship. Make something delicious for everyone tonight." "Don't worry, Mom, I'll be ready right now." Tao Hongying rolled up her sleeves and smiled happily. It's hard for a clever woman to make a living without rice. She has all the chickens, fish, meat, and eggs, so what else can she do? What's more, this is a reunion banquet and a celebration banquet. Other people want to have a banquet, but they haven't had the chance yet. Huanayang and sister-in-law Lu put the child on the kong, and then chased Tao Yuru to work in the kitchen. Aunt Wu, Mrs. Li and Mrs. Kui were sitting on the kong, looking after the children and chatting. Jiyan sat in Mrs. Kui's arms, holding a big fruit in her hand. She took a bite, and then gave it to her aunt and uncle to take another bite. Neither the aunt nor the nephew disliked the other, and they ate happily. 3 fat babies were lying on the kong, looking at them eagerly, drooling greedily, stretching out their little hands, scratching in the air from time to time. "I don't know whether I want to catch the fruit or catch the heartless young lady." Jiyan was also naughty. From time to time, he put the fruit in front of their noses and let them smell the sweetness of the fruit. Then he quickly took the fruit away and took a big bite. It made the 3 fat babies dance with joy, shouting "ah" in anger, and protesting non-stop. Mrs. Li and Mrs. Wu couldn't stop laughing. Mrs. Li nodded at the 3 fat babies' foreheads and scolded, "3 little idiots. I'm afraid you will be bullied by your sister when you grow up. You 3 will have nothing to do in the future. Let's work together to find a solution." Mrs. Kui also smiled. She hugged her fat niece to her side, as a way of taking good care of this bully for the fat babies. At dusk, the old men and Lu Biatu and others were already sitting in the main room chatting and joking, and Li Zhensheng and Li Laoer came back from the city in a carriage. Today is the court meeting. Logically speaking, Li Laoer and Mr. Wen go in and out together, so they should come back together. Mrs. Li asked, and Mr. Li waved his hand and said, "Forget it, we are all getting on the carriage to come back." Someone from the Wen family said that Mrs. Wen is sick, so Mr. Wen can only go back with her. Although everyone doesn't know much about the Wen family affairs, they also know that Mr. Wen doesn't get along with the family. After all, he always eats New Year's Eve dinner at Li's house during the Chinese New Year. So, no one asked any more questions, only Mrs. Kui's eyes added a touch of sadness. Soon, the food and wine were served, and everyone divided into two tables, chatting, laughing, eating and drinking, which re-injected vitality into the courtyard that had been quiet for a long time. In the sky, a crescent moon is half hidden in the light clouds. From time to time, its little face shows up, quietly looking towards the Li family yard to see something new. There was no conversation all night. After dinner the next morning, Li Zhensheng went to the city as usual, while Li Laoer went to the school and wandered around the valley. Mrs. Li was thinking about Mrs. Kui, so she brought a small straw hat to her granddaughter and planned to call Mrs. Kui for a walk in the orchard. At this time of year, the eager fruit trees are already in bloom, so it's a good time to enjoy the scenery and relax. It was obvious that Mrs. Kui also wanted to go somewhere, and the two parties met as soon as they left the hospital. Mrs. Kui pointed to the food box in sister-in-law Kyung's hand and said, "I made some food and wanted to accompany my aunt and Fu Niu for an outing in the mountains." Just as Mrs. Li was about to speak, a carriage turned around at the entrance of the village. Mrs. Li thought she was a guest from the other side of the valley and didn't pay attention, but Mrs. Kui's expression changed and she said angrily, "Auntie, it's Mrs. Wen's family. She actually chased her here." Old Mrs. Li also frowned, not understanding what the Wen family was planning. Even if you don't like Mrs. Kui coming in, you won't press her every step of the way, and you actually find Broken Gold Beach. She pulled Mrs. Kui behind her and told her, "You are the junior here. No one wants to find her, and you don't need to come forward. Let me see what they are doing, and then we can think of a solution." Mrs. Kui still wanted to speak, but the Wen family's carriage had already arrived. The large black carriage with a flat roof, pulled by a strong bay red horse, is very majestic. As soon as the carriage door opened, a woman jumped out and put down a footstool, then helped a middle-aged woman down. The woman turned around again, and the two of them helped out an old lady about 60 years old. The middle-aged woman has an ordinary appearance, but her expression is very dignified. The unsmiling look can even be said to be serious, not too likable. But the old lady has thin eyebrows and narrow eyes, and a pointed face. There is no kindness of the old man, but there is always a slight sadness between the eyebrows and eyes, which makes people feel a bit inconsistent no matter how they look at it. And she also found Mrs. Kui behind old Mrs. Li at a glance. Her eye circles were red at that time, and she called out softly, "Jinro." Mrs. Kui trembled subconsciously, which made old Mrs. Li frown and said, "Who are you?" "The carriage stopped in front of my house. Without bowing or saying hello, you came up to talk to my juniors. This is looking down on us Li home." The old lady was stunned for a moment, looking a little overwhelmed, and looked at the middle-aged woman next to her. The middle-aged woman lowered her eyebrows, making it difficult to tell what her expression was. She just stepped forward to salute Mrs. Li and said, "You must be Mrs. Li, right? We are from the Wen family in Xindu, and my husband is from the Wen family. The eldest son is now an official of the 4th rank and works at Honglu Temple." After saying that, she took a step back to reveal the old woman, and then said, "This is my mother-in-law. She went into the village today to visit the Kui family." Before she could finish speaking, Mrs. Li had already responded, "Oh, you are Mr. Kui's mother and sister-in-law, right? What a coincidence. I have wanted to get to know you for a long time. Who would have thought that you would come to visit me today?" Mrs. Wen's mouth twitched. She clearly said she was visiting the Kui family, but Mrs. Li kept visiting her own house. Is this just stupidity by nature, or someone who has made up his mind to protect someone? End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 478. Chapter 478, The Rat-Throwing Weapon. Sure enough, Mrs. Lee said next, during the Chinese New Year, Mr. Wen had the New Year's Eve dinner at my house. I asked him why he didn't go home. He said the food at home was not delicious. I was puzzled. This is so much poor craftsmanship. Did you come here today to learn a craft? Haha, that's right. Let me tell you, my daughter-in-law is a descendant of the royal chef. If she teaches you a few dishes, you won't force the children at home to do anything. Find food at home. Mrs. Wen's expression changed. This was not a nice thing to say, and if word spread, the Wen family would lose their face. But before she could argue, Mrs. Lee had already called her daughter-in-law out into the courtyard, and then immediately surrounded them into the Lee family's courtyard. Ji Yun looked at the Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, who were a little at a loss as they were half pushed into the door. She also smiled and took Mrs. Kui's hand, and quickly followed her. Others don't know, but she knows her grandma's temper best. The old lady must be angry and annoyed that the Wen family is chasing her here to bully others. There will definitely be fun to watch later, you must not miss it. Sure enough, Mrs. Lee gave up the main room in the front yard and led the Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law directly to the small apartment in the backyard. The apartment was not big, so the two women and two maids who came with the Wen family could only stand outside the door. The Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were politely allowed to sit on the kong. The two of them may not be used to it, as their legs are a little twisted no matter how they are placed. On the other hand, Mrs. Lee sat opposite them, crossing her legs easily. She also took out the cigarette pot that had not been used for a long time and slowly refilled her tobacco. She did not neglect the Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, and invited Nanny He and Shui Ling to serve tea and snacks, and then said to the old lady of the Wen family, "Look, my sister is older than me, so I'll call you that. Sister, your daughter-in-law doesn't look like she's working. Has she ever cooked before? What kind of food does she like to eat? She's getting older, so it's better to have a lighter taste." Mrs. Wen couldn't help but feel embarrassed when she heard her talking about an old sister. What she usually hates most is that others say she is old. She doesn't know how much effort she has put into to prevent the wrinkles on her face from appearing later. She was her dowry mother-in-law, and now she is still calling her Miss. Unexpectedly, when she arrived at the Lee family, she actually listened to 5 or 6 elders in a row. Her heart felt like it had been stabbed with holes one after another. If it weren't for her son, she wouldn't have come to this miserable place and suffered this grievance. But thinking of her son, Mrs. Wen pulled up her handkerchief and began to wipe her tears. "Sister, you don't know, I feel so miserable. You said that during the Chinese New Year, the second son had such a fierce quarrel with his father, and he ran out. Now, I don't even want to eat New Year's Eve dinner at home. As a mother, it really hurts my heart to be caught between their father and son. I wish I could go away with the breeze as long as I can find a quiet place and end the troubles in the world." Old Mrs. Lee was originally going to light a cigarette pot, but when Mrs. Wen cried like this, she almost forgot what she was going to do. This man is made of water, so why did he cry when he said he was crying? The tears still fell down in clusters. They were not pretending at all, they were crying sincerely. If she didn't know this, she might really think that the Lee family had caused her great injustice. Looking at Mrs. Wen with her head lowered, she looked resigned. Old Mrs. Lee frowned. No wonder they were able to force Jinro to run here to escape. This method is really new and strange. Mrs. Kui sat behind the old lady with Ji Yun in her arms, biting her lips tightly, angry and helpless. She was soaked in the tears of Mrs. Wen for 5 or 6 days. She knew in her heart that the Wen family did not agree with her marriage to her senior brother, but her senior brother was too determined, so the Wen family had no choice but to find her and hope that she would withdraw voluntarily. Moreover, she chose to talk openly and openly, making the old lady cry to her every day. She didn't say anything against their marriage, she just said that it was not easy for her to be a mother. This is my senior brother's mother, her future mother-in-law. She cannot be beaten or scolded. She can only endure it until she is about to vomit blood. Jiyan leaned on her aunt's lap and touched her double chin. She also felt that the Wen family was really unpopular. A soft knife stabs someone, no blood is seen, but it is more cruel than a hard knife. But whether it is the aunt or the family, there are some things that are too easy to avoid. They all have to worry about Mr. Wen, and they don't know what grandma will do. Mrs. Li listened for a long time and had a little idea in her mind. She motioned to her daughter-in-law to come forward and whispered a few words. Tao Hongying has been unhappy for a long time. She has cut out Wen's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law countless times. Who is not living a happy life? This Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law are simply out of their minds. They just go to other people's houses and cry. It's so unlucky. At this moment, when she heard her mother-in-law's instructions, her eyes lit up and she walked out immediately. Old Mrs. Li leisurely lit up the pipe and took a few puffs, exhaling thick green smoke. After a while, the room became a little smoky. Mrs. Wen was crying so hard that she choked just after she sobbed. Mrs. Li quickly smiled and said, "Sister, if you cry for yours, I'll whip mine without delay. I'm still in a hurry when I hear this. Why is Mr. Wen here?" "Yes, I refuse to marry after I have passed my age." Continue talking. She looked as anxious as if she was watching a play at a critical moment, which made Mrs. Wen lose her mood. She put on a dry handkerchief and secretly looked at her eldest daughter-in-law. Mrs. Wen secretly scolded her mother-in-law for being useless. After thinking about it, she said, "Old madam, we have been disturbing you for a long time. It is really rude. Why don't we go to her courtyard with Jinro to sit?" Old Mrs. Li quickly waved her hand. No, my sister and I hit it off right away. We didn't even say we were happy, so why did we leave? Besides, Jinro just came back yesterday, and the house is still in a mess, so how can we entertain guests?" At this point, she seemed to suddenly react and said, "Oh, don't you dislike the simplicity of our home?" No, how could it be? Of course Mrs. Wen couldn't admit it, and said with a smile, "I'm just afraid of disturbing the old lady." "Why are you bothering me? I'm not very boring at home on weekdays. From now on, you have to accompany my elder sister to visit the house more often." Mrs. Li enthusiastically pushed the tea and snacks to the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law and said, "I'm just stupid and don't know how to persuade others. I'm afraid I'll neglect my elder sister." Just as I said this, there was a sudden noise outside the courtyard, and soon 3 old ladies walked in. They were all the same age as Mrs. Li, but they were a little worse in clothes. Mrs. Li quickly pulled them onto the kong, and then introduced them one by one to the Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. "This is Aunt Zhang Wu, Grandma Feng Ba, and Aunt Wu. They are all the most persuasive old sisters in our village. I am usually in a bad mood, okay, shed a tear, they are here to comfort me." After that, she said to several old ladies, "This is Mr. Wen's mother." She said that Mr. Wen was unfilial and hurt her heart. She started crying as soon as she arrived at the door of my house and has been crying until now. I am really afraid that she will cry. If you are blind, please help me to persuade you. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 479. Chapter 479. 3 old ladies, a big show. Mr. Wen's mother? I always thought that Mr. Wen's parents were dead when this happened. After hearing this, Aunt Jongwoo said in surprise, I see that Mr. Wen is in our village during the Chinese New Year, wearing only clothes and shoes everyone helped prepare it. It doesn't look like there are family members taking care of it at all. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law of the Wen family looked embarrassed, and they wanted to explain, but Grandma Feng Ba had already pulled Wu Aunt Zhang, and then said with a smile, don't worry so much, it's not easy for anyone to live. Maybe Mr. Wen's family is so poor that he can't even eat. Of course I can't take care of him anymore. The Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law's face turned completely black. Jiyan was hiding behind her grandma, laughing so hard that she secretly rubbed her belly. When it comes to swearing, whether it's a positive one or a negative one, the old lady's fighting power is absolutely amazing. Old Mrs. Lee coughed twice and said, Old sisters, I'm here to ask for your help. Please help me to persuade Mrs. Wen. She was crying so sadly just now. Oh, yes, I'm off topic. Grandma Feng Ba quickly patted her chest and assured, don't worry, there is no one in this world that we can't persuade. Aunt Wu and Aunt Zhang also nodded repeatedly, as if they had been entrusted with important tasks. Then they all looked at Mrs. Wen, staring with 3 pairs of old eyes, eagerly waiting for her to start performing. Mrs. Wen subconsciously picked up the handkerchief, but froze there, not knowing what to do. The atmosphere in the room was awkward for a while, but in the end it was Grandma Feng Ba who clapped her hands and shouted, oh, I know, Mrs. Wen must be angry at us and feel embarrassed. Then I will show off first and complain, be an introduction. After saying that, she slapped her thigh and said in a long tone, oh, my dear, poor mother, I have raised you for 18 years, and you just left when you said you would. I am helpless, I really want to find you, Lord Yama said. It's a pity that it doesn't rain anymore, and 2 acres of land at home have been destroyed by drought. I can't live with my old bones, but that northern barbarian took a big knife. Aunt Wu and Aunt Zhang looked at each other and realized that it was not easy to let Grandma Feng Ba take on the responsibility by herself, so they quickly joined the group of patting each other on the thighs. Aunt Wu cried and said, oh, yes, you barbarians. We were living a good life, but they just came to make trouble. Our good home was just left behind. Aunt Zhang immediately took over. In order to survive, we had to climb mountains and ridges. There are 40 mountains, and we can't reach the end. Tigers, black bears, and wolves in the mountains all regard us as food. Who can see they all want to take a bite of our flesh? Wow, it's really impossible to live in those days. Grandma Feng Ba was very happy to end her solo struggle and quickly join the singing team of her old friends. Fortunately, we all worked together. We couldn't wait to climb all the way before we crossed the mountain. But as soon as we came down, we encountered barbarians again. The sharp sword was slashing at us. It was scary. Wow, even now I still have nightmares. 3 women perform one play, and the skills of the 3 old ladies are even more profound. Singing, reciting, and beating, the opera turned into a classic. Since Jingshui village suffered a natural disaster and was invaded by barbarians, he was forced to go south, crossing mountains and ridges, killing wild animals and fighting bandits, until he almost failed and died at the dock. They cried and cursed at the same time, and the jingle they made up was wonderful. Their cooperation was a tacit understanding, which was simply amazing. The Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law opposite were dumbfounded. One held up the handkerchief and forgot to put it down. The other opened her mouth, wishing that even a fly would fly in. Mrs. Lee added another pot of tobacco and continued to smoke, sighing from time to match the performance of the old sisters. But she was so happy that she let out a bad breath. The Wen family is a scholarly family, and Mrs. Wen is also a pretentious person at first glance. She probably likes romance more than daily necessities, and she is not very understanding of the world. In her opinion, Chasing someone to wipe their tears is already a very dirty method. I have to say that this method is also very effective for Mrs. Kui, who comes from the same scholarly family. But when she arrived at Li's house today, this method was destined to fail. Because the Li family is not a scholarly family, they will not do this. Don't you want to cry? Let me show you what a crushing crying scene is and teach you a lesson. Mrs. Wen took a deep breath and wanted to say something, but she choked before she could say anything. She said decisively, "Ahem, old lady, ahem, we have a long time to go out, it's time to go back, come back another day, ahem, visit." After saying that, she was about to get off the ground, but after sitting cross-legged for too long, her legs became numb. She fell off the Kong with a thud and fell to her knees. Old Mrs. Li put down her pipe and pot, and quickly gave her a hand. "Oh my, nephew-in-law, what are you doing, why are you kowtowing? There is no need to give such a big gift, being so polite is just a heretic." Mrs. Wen gritted her teeth and stood up slowly while holding onto the edge of the Kong. Without saying anything, she helped her mother-in-law get off the ground and left quickly. Mrs. Wen seemed to want to say something to Mrs. Kui, but Mrs. Kui sat behind several old ladies with her head bowed, only a little bun showing, and did not even look at her. Tao Hongying said he was leading the way, but in fact it was almost like escorting him. He quickly led the Wen family's master and servant out of the corner gate of the backyard. Old Mrs. Li immediately put out her pipe and pot and shouted, "Open the window quickly, or you'll choke me to death." "Ha ha ha," Grandma Fenba couldn't help but laugh, "you smokers feel choked, and we can't survive." To be honest, they left early. If we sit here for a while longer, we won't be able to hold on. Mrs. Wu also smiled and said, "That's right. Get me a bowl of water quickly. I'm dying of thirst. I'm afraid I've said more today than I have in a year." Aunt Zhongwu was the most energetic, clapped her hands and smiled, "Have you seen the faces of the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law? Ha ha ha, with such skills, how dare you come to our place to play harp?" Mrs. Li turned around to look at her granddaughter and Mrs. Kui. Seeing that they were not feeling uncomfortable, she said, "Old sisters, it's all thanks to you today. When I saw their attitude, it was not a good thing. I looked at Jinro's thin skin. When they cried, they softened and became annoyed, and then they took the initiative to end it with Mr. Wen. As for them, they will not complain in front of Mr. Wen. They will only say that Jinro's feelings for him are not solid enough. It is really insidious. Yes, yes. Rich families are willing to play this small game, but it is not as real as our farmyard," Grandma Fenba said with a sneer. "Although we have no knowledge, the matter of a son marrying a wife still depends on the son. After all, she is the woman who has children with him. She will sleep with him on the same bed and die in a pit. He must like it, right? What are we doing to stop her? One day, we kick off her legs and go see her. Lord hell, why don't you still want your daughter-in-law to accompany your son?" "That's the truth," Aunt Wu also said, "this old lady from the Wen family just can't think about it." It's still the fourth update of the day. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 480. Chapter 480. This is also a miserable man. Aunt Zhongwu couldn't help but scolded, "It's fair to say, she doesn't agree with the marriage, just train her son at home. Why did she come to the woman for a reason? And she even chased her to her home. Who gave her the face? When if she sheds a few tears, we will listen to her in everything, and you won't be ashamed even at your age." Old Mrs. Li is also not happy about the Wen family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law acting like this, but those two people are Mr. Wen's mother and sister-in-law after all, so it will be unpleasant to scold them if they continue. She stopped talking and said, "In short, they can't take advantage today, and they won't come next time. We didn't show any shame, so we kicked them away. It's good. The other things are leave it to the men. I will ask my second son to talk to Mr. Wen about this later. Mr. Wen is so powerful, he will definitely be able to arrange his own home. Yes, Aunt Wu nodded. First, we, the mother-in-law, have already won against the mother-in-law. Whether we can drink the wedding wine or not depends on you. Everyone laughed. Several old ladies got off the ground one after another. They originally wanted to tease Mrs. Kui a few words, but seeing her face turned red, they laughed and let her go. Li Laoer was originally in the valley. Hearing that there were guests at home and it seemed to be lively, he hurried back and saw the Wen family's carriage leaving from a distance. He often lives with Mr. Wen and is familiar with the Wen family's carriage. At this moment, Li Laoer frowned and walked into the yard, where he met several old ladies. Grandma Feng Ba was quick to speak. She pulled Li Laoer's sleeve and said, "Uncle, this old Wen family is so bullying. He came directly to our house to mourn. It's not so unlucky. You have to go see Mr. Wen, come up with a good idea." Li Laoer was confused when he heard it, and Mrs. Li quickly said, "Go inside first and drink some water. I'll tell you later." While talking, Mrs. Li sent the old sisters away first. After returning home and meeting her daughter-in-law, Mrs. Li explained everything clearly to her son from beginning to end. Li Laoer was also annoyed after hearing this. Mrs. Wen pretended to be sick last night to call Mr. Wen back to the house. Why did she suddenly recover today and come to bully others? Is this really a joke? After saying that, he stood up and said, "I still have to go to the city to talk to Mr. Wen and solve this matter as soon as possible. We can't delay it any longer." "Okay, let's go." Mrs. Li sighed and whispered, "Speak for Mr. Wen for me. It would be best for him to marry Jinro, and everyone would be happy. But if you can't defeat the family and know that you can't marry, you should do it as soon as possible. Let it go. Otherwise, it would be easy for him to remarry as a man, but Jinro is a woman, and she will be poked in the spine and gossiped about for the rest of her life." Li Laoer nodded, "Don't worry, Mom, I will definitely bring the message." Soon, he changed into the clothes he would wear when going out and got into the carriage. Zhang Feng and Ye Tong sat on the shaft of the carriage and followed them, but they were not afraid of being left alone. Cyclamen in the afternoon is a rare leisure time in the day. Li Zhensheng and Jie Huan were talking about how their small fleet should be back in the next 2 days, and they wanted to visit the dock. Seeing Li Laoer arrive suddenly, Li Zhensheng was surprised and asked, "Is there something going on at home?" Li Laoer shook his head and nodded, "There is something going on at home, but it's not our family's business." Li Zhensheng was confused and wanted to ask more questions, but Li Laoer waved his hand and said, "I don't understand for a while, so let's wait until Mr. Wen and the others arrive." Li Zhen was not short of patience. He got up and walked around the front hall and back kitchen. After a while, Mr. Wen and Luz Haiheng were waiting for him. The two of them thought something had happened to the Li family, so they also asked if they needed help. This made Li Laoer feel very complicated, especially towards Mr. Wen, who felt sympathy and distress. Li Laoer said straight to the point, "Mr. Wen, you don't know, right? In the past few days, your mother and sister-in-law have been going to the village every day to find Mrs. Kui. Your mother didn't say she didn't agree with your marriage, she just wiped her tears and said it was not easy for Mrs. Kui, forcing Mrs. Kui to give up your friendship. Mrs. Kui couldn't bear it anymore and hid back in the village yesterday, but this morning your mother and sister-in-law found our home again and continued to cry and complain about the persecution. My mother couldn't stand it anymore, so she came out to protect Mrs. Kui, and brought a few old aunts from the village with her, and made your mother and sister-in-law run away in anger." From the moment Mr. Wen heard the first word, the color on his face gradually receded, and eventually turned pale, with veins on his neck bulging out. After a long while, he held back a sentence, she said she was sick and wanted to see me more. She said it was her fault in the past. She was only immersed in the romance and didn't care much about my son. She said she would be in more pain in the future. Me, she said. When I went to court, I was still thinking about buying jewelry for her when I went back, and I was still happy that she finally remembered that she still had me as a son. But in the end, she actually wanted to stabilize me, and then went behind my back to embarrass my junior sister. Everyone knew who the she in his words was, so they felt even more sad when they heard it. Children's dependence and closeness to their mothers is natural and will not change as they grow older. Especially for children who have been neglected for a long time, when they are suddenly loved, their mood is no longer happy, but grateful. But in the end, it was discovered that the mother's love was an illusion, and the real purpose was to control him and hurt him. This kind of disappointment and pain can drive people crazy. Mr. Wen didn't speak anymore, but tears fell heavily. Lu Haiheng was originally very angry because his adopted sister had been wronged, and wanted to curse a few times. Seeing this, he also sighed. He and Mr. Wen have known each other since childhood, and they know very well that Mr. Wen is a miserable person. Mr. Wen was not taken seriously since he was a child because he was the second son in the family. When he was young, he relied on his talent and hard work to find Bachelor Kui as a teacher, and fell in love with his junior sister. As a result, the junior sister did not get married, the teacher passed away, and he began to waste time. Finally, taking advantage of the opportunity of moving the capital, he risked his life to go back to save his junior sister, and slowly won his junior sister's heart. When the junior sister also reconciled and separated, the lover was supposed to get married, but his family forced him to marry someone else to pave the way for his brother's career, and obstructed him in every possible way from marrying the junior sister. In this life, there are thousands of sufferings, but he seems to have not been left behind. Li Zhensheng patted Mr. Wen on the shoulder and gave him silent comfort. The same was true for Li Lao'er. Lu Haiheng hesitated for a while and finally joined in. Perhaps feeling the strength coming from his back and the support of his three close friends and brothers, Mr. Wen slowly stopped his tears, pulled up his sleeves to wipe away the tears, and said in a deep voice, "Thank you." Li Zhensheng and the other two sat down again. Li Lao'er thought for a while and said, "Sir, my mother asked me to bring you a message. She said that if you want to marry Mrs. Kui, you have to find a way. If you don't want to marry, or if the family can't handle it properly, let it go earlier, otherwise it will be detrimental to Kui Fu. After all, a woman's reputation is important." Mr. Wen nodded heavily and responded, "Auntie is right, I was greedy before, thinking I could have my cake and eat it too, but now I realize how stupid I was." End of this chapter.